Andy, it's fantastic to be here with you today. You are the author of a brilliant book. This is your moment. Find and follow your unique path in life and your business. I love the book. Fantastically candid, human, practical, all about bringing your best self to bear. Funny, maybe laugh and cry. Congratulations on the book. You have a number of roles in PwC, big roles as an experienced partner. You are the lead partner on the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, the global international development leader, and you are also the Shine LGBTQ Network UK sponsoring partner, and I'm sure many other things. So there's profit, purpose, passion, people, and you're an entrepreneur in your own right, having set up and launched successfully the multi-award-winning Lilliput gin brand. I mean, it's amazing. I hear it's fantastic. It's not good enough for me to enjoy it yet because I don't like gin, but one day perhaps I will. Andy, welcome to the show.
I'm totally over gin. I'm more of a tequila person, so I'm completely with you. and thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Well, we both come from the centre of the world, which is Dorset on the south coast of the UK, and that's one of a number of things we have in common. I think we both feel there's work to do in many organizations about how you bring your best of yourself to bear, whichever type of organization, large, small, public, private. And that's what we're going to talk about, but also how we create a more inclusive environment and coming out, if you like. Coming out as your best self, I think, is a theme for today. So let's get straight to it. If you look across the world, corporate world, as I said, public or private, not one specific organization, how safe is it to come out as gay?
I want that to be a really easy question to answer, but it's really not an easy question to answer. It's very much, I guess, the major part of it is about where you're at and what's gone on for you and what's going on for you. So it's obviously, I mean, this is stating the obvious. It's very different depending on who you are and where you're at. I remember when I first came out at work, well, I don't remember actually really coming out. It was just a matter of fact. I was in a very long-term relationship, and that really helped because it was completely, I'd been in a relationship for 10 years at that point. I was married. That was my first marriage. And I'm a big supporter of equal marriage. I just don't recommend it. It's very expensive. So for me at that point, when I joined Pricewaterhouse at the time, it was more of a matter of fact that no, I'm not married to a woman. I'm married to a man, and I could care less about it. And I didn't notice anyone having a problem because I moved on with the conversation. But I think that was very much to do with me, and this is back in sort of '98. I think that was very much to do with the fact that I was in a really good place, and I was in a relationship, so it was so unbelievably normal for me that it didn't trigger.
For the people who haven't had that foundation of a relationship and coming out earlier in their life, what are the things that you hear of people that you know about their concerns, their risks?
Well, I mean, I say that, it was fine that initially back in '98, but the thing that I think the big misconception about coming out at work is folks, and coming out in general, folks often think, well, that's something you do, when did you do it? How old were you? And then it's done. Of course, it's not done. You end up, unless you run around in a pair of sequin hot pants and a crop top at work, which I tend not to, you find yourself coming out multiple times a week to new clients. To the minute that folks make assumptions about your life, I always decided I didn't want to edit myself and tell a lie or create a story to avoid someone's potential discomfort. I always just told them what was going on in my situation. So you do find yourself coming out, once or twice a week even, or having to remind people of your situation once or twice a week. It's not easy, I think, and I think it's got worse, actually. I was asked a while ago to do a video for the It Gets Better campaign, and I said, I don't know if I'm a good advocate for you, because I don't know if it does get better. I think you just get used to it. I said, I'll do the, you get used to it campaign, but I'm not sure if
And
you
you get
do
used
get,
to what
well,
specifically? What do you mean?
you get used to choosing your moment. You get used to um, picking your battles. You get used to the fact that for some people, you mentioning that you might be gay makes them uncomfortable. That I think that the challenge is that whatever difference is manifesting in you that makes you not a stereotypical norm in that
Yes.
particular environment makes you kind of hyper sensitive to any sort of difference. So you kind of see things that other people don't always see, and then you want to kind of with good intention highlight those things and say to folks, well, maybe we should improve here and here because you see it.
You
Whereas
have a
if
responsibility. Well, you see it, and you have a responsibility. I remember talking to
yeah,
previous guests on the podcast, Deepa and Gina, who say that they are both women of color. The American phrase, where they say it's exhausting for a
yeah,
number of
totally,
at times because one, there's candidly at some points just faking it, hiding, and hiding in terms of either their true self or having to play a different role, or actually the responsibility. And I guess you are a high profile figure, not only within the firm you work in, but more generally. And I guess that comes with a responsibility. How do you wear it? How do you wear that responsibility?
it's tough, because I realized a long time ago that whether you like it or not, when you're in a high profile role, you are a role model. The choice is, do you step into that position and own it and then use your platform to do something good, or do you or not? So, and lots of people are uncomfortable stepping into that kind of deliberate role as a role model. I felt that I had a responsibility, especially as a partner, to tell people I was gay because I wanted to make sure everyone understood that it was totally cool to be a partner and happen to be gay, as opposed to a gay partner, which I always feel like it's interesting. Is it like a black police officer? It's like, well, actually, you're a
Yes,
police officer who happens to be black, or happens to
yes.
be gay, or happens to be South
Because that
Asian, or
comes loaded
whatever.
with a whole series of assumptions. When you change the word, apart from, when you change the order of the words, if not anything else, it loads up explicit or implicit
Oh, totally.
assumptions.
It's like gay marriage, isn't it? Well, hang on a minute. It's just marriage, but with same-sex couple. Like, why is it a gay marriage? Like, is that obviously it's more fabulous. Um,
Of course. But how do you choose then? So it comes with responsibility, and particularly as a more senior leader now, you have a greater platform and greater followership. How do you choose where to exercise the impact and that you can and have on other people?
I mean, for me, it's more of a oh, and by the way, he's gay kind of thing, rather than shouting around and waving a flag all the time. I think it's more. I often think for me in my role, it's more powerful for me to be successful in my job, and I happen to be gay. I
Yes.
mean, I've been told by lots of people how I need to be a different kind of gay partner, and that I can't go around telling people that I'm gay all the time, and etc., which I generally don't, to be honest. As you well know,
Mm.
it's not something I scream and shout about all the time. It just happens, that happens to be part of who I am.
Yes.
So what kind of thing? But I have been told how to be a better kind of gay in a professional context by colleagues, and that includes being very quiet about one's sexuality and not mentioning it and not challenging it. Um, and when people find it uncomfortable, to not kind of push back on that, but to just to swallow that and stay quiet basically. Which I've always had I've got a problem with that. I'm not editing myself and my life because of other people's discomfort. That's for others to deal with. It's none of my business. Um, but
It's
I guess
remarkable, isn't it? I mean, I'm quite shocked. In some ways, I'm shocked. Some ways, I'm not, because I know some of that from our previous conversations. But as if you want to put labels on me as a white heterosexual male, nobody's ever told me directly how to be a better white heterosexual male. They told me many other things of how I should be better, literally on a daily basis, personally and professionally. Um, but let's turn this on the head. How do you turn your determination to be, you at your absolute best? How do you turn that into creating, doing your best at work? Creating really high performing teams that I know you have. How do you use that insight, that experience, better or worse, to supercharge that culture?
I suppose I've always really fully believed that people perform better when they can be themselves. I really, I think I first saw that in something from Stonewall. And I really, really, really believe it. I totally believe it and feel it for myself, but I know it's true for those that I work with. So if I can create an environment where people truly can feel that they can be themselves, and that I can hopefully, I think, inserting some joy and laughter into that environment often like unloads the real person rather than that. I kind of feel like a lot of people are so busy trying to appear to be professional that it's like this emotional barrier,
It's
and
like,
it
who are
becomes
you?
almost
Where's the
yeah,
real you?
it's like a performance. I'm trying to be a partner kind of thing. Like, okay, I've got this idea of I should be really serious and miserable, and I'm under a huge amount of pressure. And of course, I'm incredibly busy. So, I'll arrive late and have to leave early, and I've got a very important power play here to give you about a very senior client. Blah blah. I'm like, it's all this. It's just this whole thing that you're. It's almost like I'm going to the old Vic. I've got a script, and now I need to play this role. I mean, I just don't have time for that nonsense. I like, if you don't like who I am and what I'm doing, you're welcome to give me some feedback, and I'll take it on board and decide whether or not I want to do anything about it. Um, but I'm not here to perform in a character or a caricature of myself.
Mm.
And I genuinely think, I've seen people that I've worked with over the years that are so unbelievably uptight, and eventually I sort of break them down and get to know like what's really going on with your life, or people that are relentlessly positive. I'm like, there must be something wrong with your life. Let me find out what it is. And I love to see the light and the darkness, because that's the truth about us as human beings. And
Yes.
then I think then if you can, then you create human connection, then the magic happens, and then you can do amazing things together. And that's always.
And that's not soft stuff, is it? Because that's, and I've seen what you've done and heard what you've done. And for some people, perhaps who are from a different mindset, perhaps a more mercenary, short-termist mindset, they might say, "Oh, that's all well and good. That's all a bit soft, happy clappy." But actually, people who can deliver their best, feel great about themselves, love working with other people, deliver great work, which, yes, particularly in the sectors you work in, delivers important impact on people's lives all around the world, and profit. I mean, one of the things that struck me, Andy, I went to your LinkedIn profile, and your profile is different from many others, in a great way. Normally, and I look at my own and think, gosh, that's a little bit corporate still trying to extricate myself from the system. But it says, you believe that every human being has unique genius, real power and impact, and a delightful ability to dream. And in there, you've cleverly included some of your products, if you like, your movements. Tell me about a couple of those where you have not only done it on a one-to-one basis, but you actually created a movement, a product around this belief of self, best self.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really curious about this, ability. Well, firstly, I became very curious about the strengths movement, if you like, and kind of the belief that actually everyone is unique. And I could sit, in any kind of city square and have a coffee and just watch people. I find it intriguing, and mostly to wonder about their lives and be constantly amazed at how different everybody appears to be. I think you could sit there for hours and you'd never see anyone who looks the same. I find that fascinating. So
Mm.
I've always been sort of fascinated by the idea that we are a unique creation of our past experiences, and and typically we're mostly a hot mess, and occasionally we do well with that hot mess and turn it into something helpful. That's certainly true for me. So I've always been intrigued by that uniqueness, um, and then we talked a bit about it earlier about that kind of professional barrier. If you can break that professional barrier down, and get to someone and make a human connection, I found that everybody has the ability to dream. And I tested this years ago. I went and had the opportunity to do a secondment to a drug crisis centre
Mm.
up in Scotland, and it was a really amazing experience, very humbling experience. And I mean, that sounds like a trite phrase. I don't, it was just unreal. And I was chatting to a lot of people there, and none of us are that many steps away from being homeless or being in crisis. Um, and I had the opportunity to do some work with one of the groups there, and I wanted to explore with them that if you had spent most of your life in institutions, in care, and in other institutions, in prison, what have you, if you've been homeless or are homeless, if you try to kill yourself multiple times through sort of heroin overdoses, could could you and can you still have the capacity to dream? Um, and it was amazing to see that every single person, regardless of their experience, still had the capacity to dream at some level.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
if you could just be bothered to not judge and to genuinely be curious about that person and their experiences, and to explore the idea of dreams and what the small things and the big things that might make you proud, and how you might want to look back on your life, then you can kind of tap into that ability to dream. And I think it's one of the that those two things of exploring uniqueness and appreciating, respecting uniqueness, appreciating someone else's truth and experiences as their truth, and then looking at dreams and aspirations and and what big and small things make you proud. Suddenly you create this unreal human connection, and then it's like, well, so what are we going to do is the next question. What will we achieve together? um, and that certainly wouldn't be writing the next supply chain strategy report, as far as I'm concerned. It wants to be something big and exciting that makes it onto my list of things that I'm proud of when I look back on my life the day before I die. So
Brilliant.
that I think is really intriguing. And in my darkest moments, that's the thing that often, like, I crawl out of my little black hole that I find myself in, and I remember that's actually human connection and the ability to
That's brilliant.
inspire and
That's
do cool
beautiful.
stuff.
I mean, your workshops, Genius Power Dreams workshops, which I've attended, is a format. I mean, it's a
Mm.
successful format, and it's changed people's lives. I mean, they are incredibly powerful, simple, and that's hard to do simple stuff well. And it works. I mean, it works brilliantly.
And
How do you?
I still get people shout at me across the street and go, Andy, and I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? And then they come over and they're like, oh, about 7 years ago, I was at one of your workshops,
There
and
you go.
and they're like, it completely changed my life, and now I'm doing X, Y, and Z. It's so, I mean, and it doesn't really matter what's happened that week. It totally changes my week.
That's
It's
fantastic.
amazing.
So if we're speaking to people who are leading or managing teams at the moment, looking to perhaps take on a big challenge, lead a big program of work, take on a big role, and they want to do what you've just described, foster that connection, that sense of inclusion, but they're also under pressure. I mean, the world, or whatever country you're listening to this at the moment, there's a huge amount of economic, societal, political
Yeah.
pressure and turbulence. How do you instill that genius and encourage people to dream whilst also dealing with the pressure and the context that they're facing?
I always feel like, wherever you are, whatever situation you're in, however bad it is, however, little money you've got to spend and time you've got available, you if you just stop for a second and realize, you're surrounded by the people you're surrounded by. It's kind
Mm,
of tough, that's
mm,
the team you've got.
mm,
Um, so rather than moaning about it or trying to exclude people or trying to do it all yourself. I mean, I always thought it was crazy to hire people and then do their jobs for them. I thought that's like the art of nonsense, as far as I was concerned. But I think, one thing is just if you can really just take a small moment to try to connect with folks and find out, what is it about them that is useful on this journey that we're on. When are they at their best? Can I understand how they show up at their best? And how do I take that cool stuff and apply it to this challenge that we've got? Because like all the stuff we've talked about, I am genuinely interested and I generally like people. I prefer dogs than humans, I must tell you. So I don't dislike human beings generally, although I've got a list I could provide you with. But I'm doing it because I know that if I can engage at a human level, I can find out the magic they've got, disconnect the nonsense that they've been told, where they've been told they're rubbish all their lives and they must focus on that. Get them focused on their magic, push them out of their comfort zone on their magic, and pull that magic into the task that we're working on. And then we will achieve things that we didn't even imagine were possible. So it's not just because I'm a nice person, although I'm one of the nicest people I know. It's not just that I'm a nice person. It's about results. It's about delivering. It's about achieving what you need to achieve, but also achieving the completely unexpected on the way to achieving that, which actually might turn out to be even more. And you don't have the right, and you don't get to achieve more unless you create human connection and you respect and appreciate those people. So it doesn't matter how busy you are, how under stress you are. If anything, in those circumstances, you really absolutely don't have any choice. You must extract the essence of genius from those individuals. Otherwise, you might as well send them all home, spend more time with their families, and do it yourself.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I think all of that is brilliant. It requires real skill to do what you described, because every individual is genuinely unique. And what I mean by that is there'll be some individuals who, when you ask them a question, what makes you tick, what motivates you, they will give you everything, sometimes too much. Others will give you small amounts and glimpses, and you have to, in a way, earn their trust for them to then peel off some of the layers. You also talked about observing them. You actually have to watch, observe, sense, and then work out how much you can orchestrate yourselves versus allowing them to do it. I mean, that takes real skill, as opposed to just, if you like, putting them on the spot and saying, "Come on, tell me, what's your genius?"
Most people don't really know what they're really good at because they've spent their whole lives being told what they're not good at. So, and that's hard, and that's the hard work, which apparently is good work. So that's where they go. But the critical question and exploration that I found is really powerful for this is to say, tell me when you were last at your best. Now, give me like 5 people that worked with you for the last couple of months and let me go and chat to them, and I'll ask them, when did you last see that person at their best? And don't just give me some bubblegum nonsense answer. What day was it? What did they do? Who was there? And what was the result of what they did? Be super specific. And with that question, when did you last see me at my best? And what day? What did I do? Who was there? What was the result of it? With that question, you start to build up a picture of that person at their best. And it's the most, the thing is that us at our best is something we can't hide from. That genius leaks out all over the place. But it's not something we really, as an individual, we don't really appreciate it because we've been told for years to focus on the stuff that we're not good at.
Yes.
So, and it's terrible because it pushes everybody to mediocre and average and misery. I don't see misery as part of my story. Like, I can do misery all on my own. I don't need that from colleagues, but really,
in some ways it's easier, isn't it, to squash people into mediocrity, because you can then crank the machine harder and faster. Whereas when you unleash the genius, to use your words, it's in some ways it's more unpredictable, and it requires more coordination and folding together of people. But we're all adults here, or at least most of us. You sort of think it takes time to figure out, but it means you can't always go A, B, C, D, follow the X, follow this path.
You've genuinely got to be interested in the people around you. And if you're not, I would recommend you don't bother. You've got to be
Good
interested.
advice.
And if you can't be interested and you don't like them, it's not the right moment to do it. And by the way, just because you've had a horrible life and you've been told to focus on your weaknesses all your time doesn't mean you have to make everybody else suffer as well. Like,
Indeed.
it's like they must not be allowed to enjoy themselves because I had a life of misery. Well, that's pretty nasty. But
Yeah.
also, sometimes life is just difficult. So maybe that's not the right moment to do it.
Yeah.
But
Taking your moment. Yeah.
but I generally think if you want to get the best out of people, and in the worst of times, you absolutely need the best out of people, because you probably can't get more new people anyway, and you don't have a choice. Then you need to find it in yourself to like have a little moment, and then to be really and to be interested, to be curious, to explore those people, and you will find magic happens.
Andy, you talked about developing really high performance teams and cultures throughout this conversation. And you work with very senior officials in the UK and other countries around the world. And you previously worked in the private sector in your consulting career. And if one of those individuals came to you and said, Andy, look, I want to supercharge the performance of my business, I want to make it more inclusive, more empowering, what are the absolute, top 1, 2, or 3 actions that she or he should take?
Just first thing is just check in with yourself. Do you really want to do that? Or are you trying to create the impression of doing that or tick a box to do that? Because if you're not really that bothered about it and it's just a nice new agenda, then it's probably not going to work. So firstly, really be sure, is it genuinely your intention to do something? Because if you want to create a powerful, a strong, inclusive team, it's a major pain in the backside. And it's much easier to force a team to be homogenous and to agree with you, and to be the same as what you've always known. And
So are you up for it? Are you up for it?
are you really up for it? Because the single what I've learned, if I would be pompous enough to have learned anything in my amazing career, um, I would have learned that the single biggest factor in affecting change from an inclusion perspective has been my desire to affect change. So when I wanted to recruit and promote a truly diverse leadership team when I was head of sales and marketing for PwC a few years ago, the single biggest factor in me achieving that within 6 months was my desire to do it.
Yes.
There were literally millions of small reasons why it was completely impossible. Namely, it had never been done before, and therefore it won't be done. I'm like, well, it will be done. So tell me, I'm not looking for the 1,000,001 reason why I can't have it. I'm looking for the one reason I can have it. So let's start again, and let's tell me exactly how this is going to be possible, because I'm having it. Because I don't believe it's not possible.
Yeah.
So you have to have,
You
and
have
I
to have
say
the
that would be
desire.
so number one
Yeah.
would be, do you really want it? Number two is, are you really prepared to put everything you've got into making this happen? So that'd be the second thing. The third thing would be, I think you need to, might sound a bit bizarre, but I think you need to know two things. One is what you're prepared to be fired for, and what you're prepared to resign over. And that, in many ways, that helps to center you, I think, in an organization when you're trying to, deploy almost guerrilla tactics for change. So, as a leader who wants to affect change in terms of building an inclusive team, and driving high performance, you need to know why you're doing it, that you are doing it. You need to be prepared to make difficult decisions, and you need to understand what it is you're prepared to resign over and what you're prepared to be fired for. So I've always been prepared to be fired for doing what feels like the right thing at the time when it comes to inclusion. Now, I'm always happy to learn that what I did wasn't wasn't the right thing because new information has presented itself, and that's
Sure.
cool. I'm totally up for that. But um, I almost feel like, yeah, come on, come and get me then. Like, come at me and tell me that I need to leave because I tried to do the right thing. And you're like, literally, it's quite hard to touch people when you're in that mode. So you do have to be strong, and you have to be prepared to overcome the millions of reasons why it's not possible to find the one reason why it is possible.
Mm.
Um, so that has to be your drive. That has to be your driving force, and I think you need to understand very clearly why you want it.
Yeah.
And it's not about being a nice person. It really is. It really isn't about being a nice person. It's not about doing the right thing for the community. It's like, it's not, it's not about representation. It's about performance. Like, if when I look at our
That creates
organization,
opportunity, right? I mean, in
yeah, it's like,
simple terms, that provides openings for other people to come in, seeing that you're doing a great job and do great work.
yeah, I mean, the side effect is it's the right thing to do. The side effect is that
Sure.
you support people. There are amazing side effects, but the reason to do it is that you're trying to, you can't get away from the fact that nobody's got the answer for what's going to happen tomorrow or even, this afternoon. Who on earth knows? Like, it doesn't matter where you studied, what experience you've got. That, that history is no longer the defining factor of whether or not you're going to be successful tomorrow.
Mm.
Your ability to bring people together, to find answers that you could never have imagined, to deal with the unknown, to not be the expert, to explore from the middle as a
Mm.
leader,
Mm.
to accept failure quickly and respond and pivot, and to really understand why you're there, your intention, your purpose, and to really find the best in people in order to be on that journey, and to do that more than just to be about money and revenue, but to be
Yes.
about impact and legacy. That you know that was really what I don't know whether you got that from the second half of the book, but that was
Mm.
really what I was trying to say in the second half of my book. Like,
Absolutely.
strip out all the nonsense that is, like, all the hot air and the friction in your organization. Get back to why you're here, and just do that deliberately. Then what a
That's
miracle.
really
You'll
clear.
probably
That's
save
very
money and
powerful.
do cool stuff.
So let's, as we draw this to a close, let's talk about you a little bit more. I mean, apart from knowing you like prefer dogs to humans, which is fascinating. I probably knew that, or I sensed that. And you talked about impact just now and throughout this conversation. How do you, in a nutshell, describe your impact and the impact you want to have?
I think, despite all the cool things that I think I've done, and all the things I've done to try to amuse myself along the edges of my career, mostly at PwC, like my gin business and all the various little distractions of creativity to keep my brain moving. The thing that my legacy is always that person who shouts at me across the street and says, "Oh, Andy, that what you did there, that changed my life." That
Mm,
that is my legacy. Um,
great.
which is amazing.
Magical.
It is magical. It's a real gift, and it's not something I ever, I would, like with all great things, it's not something I aimed for.
Mm,
I mean, in every one of, writing the book was therapy for me. In all the workshops I've done around strengths, in all the opportunities I've had to build teams based on strengths, it's all been it's all been therapeutic for me, because the more, even this, the more I hear what I mean from coming from my mouth back into my own ears is my own therapy. So I wasn't doing it because I wanted to change people's lives. I was just trying to get to the next day. So knowing that trying to do the right thing to get myself through the next day has helped some other folks get to the next day and ultimately to achieve things that they hadn't imagined that they could.
yeah,
That is totally, that's a legacy. I'm cool. I'm going to take that.
oh, absolutely. I think that's brilliant. It reminds me of a experience I had many times growing up in Wareham, where my mum would take hours just doing a really basic shop because you'd be walking up the town and meeting all the people like the ones you just described, not shouting out at her, they're probably too scared, but just saying, Mrs. Lancefield, thank you for what you've done. And all we'd want is our lunch on time, but it would take forever coming back home. But that reminds me of that. But you've also talked, Andy, about being at your best, and asking other people, when have you been at your best precisely, and so forth. What are the habits, the practices, the aspects of how you run your life that create the fuel for you doing your absolutely best, most brilliant work?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I would caveat everything that I would say with, I find it increasingly difficult to find those moments, and I have to work on this all the time. And I do sit sometimes in dark moments and really struggle. So I am not an example, I don't think, of getting this right all the time. I occasionally stumble upon getting this right. The fact is, if I were to try to decompose the factors that might help me, one would be getting the right kind of sleep, not leaving an argument unresolved, appreciating that most people, so appreciating or assuming positive intent from everyone, as opposed to everyone's out to get me. That's quite helpful. I've got to say that you mentioned your mum. My mum, good Dorset mum as well. Same thing. Like we go out for milk. She'd be chatting to every, Tom, Dick, and Harry, as it were, and then she'd forget that we were supposed to be getting milk. My mum. I remember when I made partner, I told my mum, and she gave me about, I think it must have been about 10 seconds before she started talking about her new potatoes that she just dug up.
Yes.
So I've got to say, my mum is she's a great. I mean, my mum is a great source of grounding, and I really respect and appreciate her ability to get my feet back on the ground and to realise that whilst I might be catastrophizing about that situation or my life in general, the minute if I have a quick chat with my mum, suddenly things fall back into place again. So I deliberately make the most of my mum's good old-fashioned getting my feet on the ground ability, and then occasionally remind her to do the same sometimes. But that's it, really. I mean, I kind of feel like we're all kind of on this sort of journey to understand ourselves and
we
to
are,
try
but I think
to.
the thing I find refreshing, Andy, is that you call it out that you are on a journey. You have your dark moments. I think many people do, but they're either not conscious of them enough or not willing to share enough of them. So they portray a life that is always brilliant, always magnificent.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on, let's get real. And I think your ability to call it out helps not only yourself, but helps other people.
I feel like when we get it all right, that'll be the moment when we die. Because it's like, okay, well, you're done now. Now you're ready for whatever's next. So, I mean, I think I've got a bit of time left to perfect.
Absolutely. You've got a lot more to give. And Andy, you are an inspirational person, somebody I admire greatly. I loved in this conversation and our other conversations how you bring out the nuances of topics that are important in the workplace and in business. You bring out the paradoxes that are paradoxes rather than trade-offs. The fact that you can work on yourself and help other people, and actually how you can create an inclusive environment and deliver strongly great, performance. I'm really grateful for your time, really grateful for your candor and for your advice. There's so much advice in this episode. Where can people find out more about you and your endeavors online if they so wish?
I gratuitously set up my own little website, andywoodfield.com, much to the amusement of my colleagues. So you can go there or just check me out on LinkedIn, on Twitter. That's kind of where I do reside when I've got something good to say. If I'm not saying anything, I've got nothing good to say at that particular point in time.
Very good. Very good. Andy, thank you for your time. That was another edition of Lancefield on the Line. I do hope you enjoyed this episode. Please check out the other episodes in this series. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and to the podcast. and give us a vote of thanks with a high rating. And thanks for your time. And thank you again, Andy.
Pleasure.